They say the Nephilim look like clowns. That's the reason the shaman give you who wants to fall. The deception is that the tribulation is now. But it was a thousand years ago when they added 1,000 more. Tell me why I believe the lies. Close your eyes and blind to all the things are true. The devil's in disguise. In the little season hypnotizing you, girl. Now the strikers are making their rounds, yeah. Like they did to all the chains of buffers and the cemetery cathedrals too. You know the first computer weighs 660 pounds. That's why all the masons are receiving the mark from Nero just to pray for you. Tell me why I believe the lies. And close your eyes to all the things that's true. The devil's new disguise is the jester in the little season to rapture you. Now the mountains are the trunks and the trees on the ground, like the Titanic tree of life hidden in plain view. We're gonna hide in the eye of the elephant in the ground. It's a cave in the mountain, and people will finally think of the elephant in the room. Tell me why do they lie? Close your eyes to everything they do. The jester is a great disguise. When the little season hypnotizes, then comes the rapture you.
Hello everyone, how are we all doing? Come on in, sit on down. We're going to do another off-the-cuff Truth or Therapy session. I know I only did one maybe a few days ago with Vinny B, but today I was listening to one of my go-to YouTubers today. I like to go and just chill out sometimes, whenever I got a bit of spare time. This morning I was walking back from the garage after dropping my car off for a full service. And I was listening to this podcast and it was entertaining. I was really into it. The guy was getting into his flow, and I had to pause it, because family, you got things to do, errands to run, a day out to have. And in the evening, I found a bit of time to finish off the stream, and the thing was saying to me, no longer valid, not there, no stream, nothing, cannot refresh. And I was like, what is going on? And then I checked my feed, and the guy's posted saying, sorry guys, and he's showing this screenshot of his phone. He's been given a strike for the video for crossing some boundaries he shouldn't have crossed. And so I thought, you know what, I'm going to get in touch with the guy. I'm going to invite him on. And Connor, how are we doing?
I'm great, man. I'm super happy to be here. I do have to say, before we get too far into it, I am lucky in that I didn't actually get a content strike. This is like the first official warning saying, if you do it again, you're done. So obviously there's some like silver lining there. Mm-hmm. We're not actually, like, we didn't take actual damage. But like I said, I think some lessons were learned. And like I mentioned before, I understand that there are lines in the sand we're not supposed to cross. I think I just have to do a better job of picking my battles, so to speak, when it comes to what it is I'm going to talk about on YouTube, right?
Yeah, it's a fine line. It's a fine line, and I don't know if anyone's going to hear this, but I'm about to click record, so we might say really loud.
Recording in progress.
Recording in progress. There it is. But yeah, just in case everything goes wrong, because I've been having some tech issues myself, and I did a podcast yesterday, and I kept recording our talk, and it just kept crashing on me, and I was losing everything. So I'm going to record this to the cloud on Zoom. So if everything goes horribly wrong, we can carry on and we can upload it afterwards, okay? But yeah, back to what we were saying with your stuff. It's funny because the thing you got a strike for, which we're not allowed to mention, okay, is the exact same thing I also almost got a strike for as well, about in last October, actually. Because people believed last October, especially in America, that a particular signal was about to be sent to everybody's mobile devices, and the consequences of that would be a Walking Dead situation. Will that get around the algorithm? I don't know. We'll see.
That's a good one. It's a good
yeah, I don't know, something like that, and I just mentioned a video about it, and I said, oh well, there's actually a film out there called Cell, which is just about this, and the predictive programming's there, so who knows, maybe. But my conclusion was probably not, though, because we had the same thing in England months ago and nothing happened. People didn't rise from the dead or turn into vicious monsters, but the fact that I had mentioned the specific thing we're not allowed to talk about that was put inside of people's bodies, and those other things we're not allowed to talk about that have been erected in everybody's cities, combined together, I instantly got a ban, and they gave me a strike, and they said, well, if you won, we could take that strike away in 3 months' time, but you have to do some re-education first. And they invited me to do
I got the re-education invite too.
Did you get it too? Yeah.
Yeah, I actually considered it because I was like, 90 days to have the warning removed. I wasn't sure. It's the same thing, right? They'll give you this creator demographics survey. I don't know if you filled out that one. I'm trying to avoid that one because I'm afraid they're going to get too much detail and then use that against you. You know what I'm saying?
I've not filled out any surveys, but my curiosity got the better of me, and I did do the course. And I just had to see, because I've been in many corporate situations, sensitivity training before, and it was just like that. It's like I was at work getting in trouble for, upsetting a member of staff with some spicy words, and it was the same thing. Like, they sit you down and make you watch a video, and then you have to sign some things saying you've done the retraining, you won't do it again. It was literally like that, and they made me answer questions which were like the official narrative on the situation. And you have multiple choice.
Oh, you have to know the agenda.
Yeah,
you have to be able to
yeah, they got multiple choice questions for you, so Ian said this, blah 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 blah, X, Y, and Z, and it's like an overtly conspiratorial take on something, like specific to this thing, and it's like, but the truth actually is A, B, or C, and it's like he's completely right, something or other, or some other like strange take, and then it's like the mainstream narrative on the situation. You have to get correct on the mainstream narrative each time.
Gotta be woken up to get through the gatekeeping.
You should do it. It's fun. It's actually fun to do, and you'll get.
I will. I'll do it. Maybe we'll do it on stream next week as kind of a.
That'll be good. Yeah.
we can let chat contribute to the selection of choices and see what happens.
Yeah, well, it'd be good for people who aren't content creators to kind of see what we have to go through behind the scenes. It's really silly. It's really stupid stuff, but it really is like a get back in line type of thing. It's just I'll let you off with a warning this time. It's kind of. It reminds me of in England when you get caught speeding. Right, you get a fine. It's like £100 and a point on your license, and like 6 points you lose your license, type of thing. But they send you a letter saying we can reduce this fine to £50 and take the point off if you come to our speed awareness course, which you have to pay like 30 quid to do. On top of that, it's kind of. So I did the course, and everyone sat there in this like hotel lobby meeting room in this cheap place, you know what I mean? They're all sat there in a circle with their arms crossed, like just looking at this guy in the middle of the room, just trying to tell them how to drive, and they're like, what the hell am I doing here? You know what I mean? I was doing 33 in a 30 zone. It's kind of
like, I didn't even do anything wrong. Right. In America, it's very similar. Like if you get a traffic citation, at least out over here, you can go down to the court to contest it and be like, I didn't do it. But even if you're totally vindicated, you still have to pay half. And that's like, it's like, oh, you're innocent? Half.
Exactly,
yeah. Okay, thank you.
I don't know the inner workings, but I could tell like that stream you did was so good. Like I was enjoying every second of it. You were in your flow. You were talking about. We're going to talk about. I want you to relive the moment today, and let's get into some of the things you talked about again.
I want to. Yeah, it's almost kind of awesome. It's almost divine in a sense because now we get to talk about it in a much bigger environment than just my little humble channel. So, and it's cool because obviously only a few people were there. Like you were there, and some others who got to see. I think we had maybe like 30 people who saw the stream, and that's great. Honestly, 30 is a good number for me. But yeah, crazy to see that they deleted it, but it gives us a chance to kind of start over and take it away again and kind of go from the top. So I'm cool with that.
Yeah, in a way. I mean, like I said, you were surprised at the thing that got you banned, like got the video taken off, because you talked about a lot of like funny things and obviously outrageous things throughout, but it was this odd one particular little thing relating to what happened 3 years ago that kind of like got you.
It's funny too because they sent me an email saying we've removed your content, so I was like, oh, let's check it out, and it let me go into the YouTube studio and said here's where the violation is: 1 hour 42 minutes 51 seconds or something like that.
Yeah,
but by the time I got to the studio, which was within 5 minutes of the notification, the video is deleted, so you can't review the content. It was like review and react because I suppose in some instances, maybe if you're a larger creator, you could like cut that segment out of the stream or mute a segment.
Yeah.
But it was like, it didn't give me that chance. It had already like removed it. So there was no option to mess with it. But I did think that was interesting that there was like a chance, like if you were, I think maybe if it had been a traditional upload and not a live stream, because I think their own archive just dumped it. And then there was no video for them to offer me to be able to review anyway. So
yeah,
but
something like that.
I learned I should record too, right? Like I should be using the OBS to just record my streams anyway when I'm doing it, just so that way, if it gets lost, it's not lost forever. Like number 11 will forever be the lost episode of the main character podcast, so.
And for people listening out there, this is why you should always download people's videos and put them on a hard drive somewhere as a backup, just in case. If you like what Truth channels are doing, save their work, because trust me, like it all just vanishes one day. Like I have so many videos from like 2014 era of conspiracy which I made, gone, never will see the light of day again. And I wouldn't say it was my best work, but it's still my work. It's still something I was passionate about, and it's the stuff you really go hard on. When like the stuff they don't want you going hard on is what the things they just take them away. Don't even give you a chance to like review or grovel or anything. It's kind of nope, but you're right. If it's something trivial like, well, this person over here says you use their song, they'll give you a chance to mute that section or just remove it from the thing, and then it's all good. We'll let you have it up, type of thing. But if you touch on any of those, and I sent you a list of the hot topics.
Yeah, it was funny. I looked at it and I was like, oh, all the things I like to talk about.
Yeah. It's like
all the things I can't say.
You can talk about them, but you've just got to not say the word. That's all it is, because it is all algorithm. It's all,
make sure you don't. Yeah,
it's all robots.
Don't give the wrong impression, right? Yeah.
Don't
make people think you're hating on anyone.
Exactly. Yeah, you gotta have plausible deniability. It's like the journalist defense. It's like, I'm just covering what other people are saying. I'm not.
Exactly. Yeah. Fair use. Right.
Fair use. Yeah. Well, at least you have fair use. I don't even have that in England, but yeah, you've got fair use, so use it. Yeah, you have the rights.
Is that a reality? See, I'm not. That's one thing about this community. I'm not a teacher or anything. I'm more of a classmate, I guess you could say, in all this. I didn't even know that was the case. Well, you guys have different policies on YouTube over there versus here. I should know this, but
no. I think fair use is okay. It's not a British law though, necessarily. And it's like freedom of speech. We don't have a freedom of speech amendment we don't even have a constitution. We have the Magna Carta, and our laws kind of based on that. But ours doesn't work like anything is permitted to say because of freedom of speech. All we have is our things you're allowed to say until you're not. Do you know what I mean? We have a list of things you can't talk about, which are put into law. Do you know what I mean? That's how it works instead. Yeah. And it's an ever-growing list of things you can't talk about put into law. But until then, it was all fair game until it's not. That's basically
makes sense.
Yeah, so
we kind of have a mini version of that, like the hate speech laws. Like even though there's technically not any hate speech, if you were to say like be involved in some sort of a crime or an engagement, like say you got in a bar fight with somebody, but something left your mouth that was of a certain type of You know what I mean? Like that could change the entire case in the United States anyway. It's like all of a sudden now it's a hate crime, or you know what I mean? It can complicate things, the things you say,
but
despite
look
you
at
having
it,
free speech.
constitutionally, you can still win that case. Like,
Yeah.
technically, like it's
As long as you're in the right city.
well, yeah,
It's like a state issue, maybe.
things are
If you
getting
can
worse.
use it.
Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. Well, you know, I hate to dwell on it, but you know how it is. In fact, it reminds me of one of the things I was thinking about lately, which is something I wanted to talk about it just a little bit because it's kind of an America-specific thing. But we've been having this like port workers strike thing. A lot of people have been talking about it where, you know, they wanted to see some increase in their wages and it hasn't been happening. So they're threatening to like shut down the ports in the United States. You know, the workers, it's a strike. And it hasn't quite hit yet, but you can already see the rush for the toilet paper and stuff is beginning. And we went to the store late last night and hung out with some interesting individuals. You know, if you go late at night, there's a 24-hour grocery store out here, and you get to see all the interesting night people down there. But one of the cashiers was saying that he was set for a 12-hour day today, and we're like, "What are you doing?" And he says, "I'm going to watch through all of the Lord of the Rings director's cut edition, or like the extended cut editions of the Lord of the Rings." He's going to sit for like 12 hours, and it was kind of the thing that inspired me thinking that this is the perfect topic, this because it just keeps coming back, this incursion of beings from some sort of subterranean realm, like this Nephilim horde, so to speak, like we're talking about. Because here in the Lord of the Rings, it's basically just canon that you have this Uruk-hai orc horde, you know, just part of the story. So I was thinking about that last night while we were at the store, so it's nice that we're back and talking about it again. Everything kind of flows in my life in such a way. It's like a river of things going in one direction, you know. Here we are back on the subject of Nephilim just because it's what we do, what we talk about, and we arrived here, and it's just interesting, you know. I'm surprised to be here on your channel right now, like at random today, because I wasn't even supposed to be here today. I was supposed to have like work today, so everything kind of slides in the right direction when it's supposed to, I guess.
Oh,
But
yeah, definitely some kind of odd serendipity taking place. Absolutely.
yeah,
I don't normally
can't
even
complain.
stream on Thursdays either. It's only because I couldn't stream last night, and I usually do one on Wednesday. My wife has lovingly allowed me to go live again tonight,
Yeah,
you know, and given me permission to you know, to spend a couple of hours in the office just to get something out. And I was like, I saw what happened to you, and I was like, I need to talk with the guy again. It's been a few episodes, you know. I had thinking about it on episode 62, so it's been 5 episodes now since I last talked to you.
not too long, really.
And yeah,
Time flies, you know, when you're having fun.
it does. And I thought, you know what, let's get him back on. Let's have another conversation, because I like the first one, and I like your style, and I like your content. So here we are, and yeah, let's go into the Nephilim horde. Like,
All right.
let's do this.
Let's do it.
So go ahead, share your thoughts and opinions on this, and some of the connections you were making along the way.
All right, cool. I'm going to pop over to another screen really quick here, and this is just for us to read a couple of things. So a couple of years ago, this is something that's kind of big for me because as a younger guy, I was really into playing video games and stuff. And this was, you know, 2006. I was born in 94. So, you know, I was 10 years old or 12 years old at this point. So this series of games called Gears of War came out in like kind of the early 2000s. And obviously we have subsequent titles, Gears of War 2, Gears of War 3. And the plot of this game basically centers on, it's an alternate universe on a planet called Sarah, but it's, like they say, a fictional Earth-like planet. Human civilization develops and endures a millennia-long conflict that leaves humanity on the brink of extinction, so on and so forth. The big push of the game is that at some point in the history of these people, some sort of a subterranean horde of monsters emerges and begins waging war against humanity. And all this takes place on a day they call Emergence Day, otherwise known as E-Day. So this is a swift, full-scale, coordinated, unprecedented planet-wide assault on the surface of Sarah, initiated by the subterranean race of the Locust Horde. And this kind of conflict is just, you know, obviously this is a piece of art. This is a video game. But we all understand as a truth-seeking community that there's oftentimes, you know, elements of truth you know, used as inspiration basis and also, you know, found within pieces of entertainment, such as things like Gears of War video game and other things like that. So Emergence Day is what in that universe they refer to as the day that this takes place. But the reason all this is interesting to me is because, we as a truther community have discussed and explored topics like deep underground military bases and, equivalent to like the Underground Railroad of today, where billions of dollars of United States military spending has gone to, creating massive tunnel networks and underground infrastructure in the United States, with the purpose of, defending the country in the case of some kind of an invasion or, being able to move troops and equipment around in that kind of an instance. So it's no secret that there is underground infrastructure, especially in the United States, and it's something that the United States has spent a lot of money on. One of the things that we were talking about during the stream yesterday was the idea that right before the 9/11 terror attack in the United States, there was an announcement made by Donald Rumsfeld about the Pentagon in the United States having misplaced $2.3 trillion. And at the time that happened, we're talking, I think that was September 10th, 2001, that announcement was made. And for a lot of people that don't know, $2.3 trillion is an absurd amount of money. I mentioned that because our nation's $33 trillion in debt, it doesn't seem like as much, in the scale of just how crazy that it's just money printing out of a machine. It doesn't seem to have any real value anymore. But at the time, we're talking early 2000s, 2.3 trillion is an absurd amount of money. And they just said that it disappeared. They don't know what happened to it. They don't know where it all went. And we know they've justified it over the years with $10,000 toilet seats and everything else that you could imagine to try to say, oh, that's where all the money went. But in this instance, there's an actual piece of evidence that we can point to that says the United States government has, on at least one occasion, misplaced an enormous amount of money. And when I look at that and I correlate that with they've already admitted to producing massive amounts of underground infrastructure in the United States, I can see how it's possible that if you want to hide something or store it, what do? You bury it. But what do you bury it into? That's the question. So looking at some of the history of the United States, I think we found out yesterday that it was, we'll pull up another tab here. It was, I think, if I can do this, Google's being all weird. So the National Park Service Act was established in 1916 in the United States. And basically what this does is it promotes and regulates the use of parks in the United States, the preservation of scenery, wildlife, natural historic objects. There's essentially territories that the United States federal government has partitioned away from the general public. They've made the land, it's under specific bureaus. And essentially what that allows them to do is to monitor and control these land regions in the United States. And everybody knows about them. They're some of the most beautiful places in the country. That doesn't take away from any of that. But it has created, these little areas around the country where the federal government has oversight even within state territories. And the general public has, there's kind of a shroud of secrecy there. A lot of people are familiar with the missing 411 cases and the strange number of disappearing, people in these national parks. It's a widely understood phenomenon among, mystery and truther people, those who seek into that kind of a thing. And there's some pretty great channels that talk about it. David Paulides, he has like the original missing 411, and then there's also some great videos about the subject that are done by, what's his name? Bob Gimlin. And Bob Gimlin is kind of like a Sasquatch cryptid guy, but a really great channel. I recommend checking out if you guys haven't seen it before. But essentially what I'm starting to think about is this theory coming to mind that perhaps we're living in a sort of parasitic farm civilization, so to speak. I know this is not necessarily something new or something that people haven't coined before. I'm just saying this is kind of my idea. I'm spitballing here. So don't quote me. But essentially, we who are believers in this millennial kingdom theory, this idea that Christ did as he said and returned to the earth after his resurrection and after his ascension, and came back and created this millennial kingdom on the earth, ruling alongside the saints and creating an actual manifestation physically of that kingdom that's spoken about throughout the Bible. My understanding is that during that sort of iron rod rulership, as it was described, I don't think that you would be comfortable living among that kind of civilization as essentially an illegal entity. We know that in the antediluvian period, there was the initial incursion of the Nephilim race against humanity, which was, as you know, a product of the Watchers and mankind producing these giants as their offspring. And in some of the various literature you can read, in Enoch and Book of the Giants and such, there is the implication that these giants actually approached Enoch and asked him to request to God on their behalf if they could be redeemed. I don't know if this is true. This is just something I've read. Unfortunately, though, the story is that Enoch returns with the answer being no, that because they're essentially illegal beings that they have to be destroyed. I don't know what the verdict is ultimately, but there's a sentiment here that humanity is God's creation here in this world that he made, and that we are supposed to be here for his purposes. But somewhere along the line, the enemy has decided to try to divert that course, to insert a replacement in our place as the rulership class of the world. And that includes essentially setting up his offspring, the satanic offspring, as the ruling class in the world. And it's pretty easy when your initial offspring are giants, right? Especially the way the Bible describes the original Titans as being these massive monsters that eat everybody until there's nobody left, and then they eat each other. Very scary. So obviously the Lord floods the earth, preserving Noah and his lineage, preserving the human gene structure. And then we enter into the post-flood world. And I've heard it discussed in various circles. I don't know if this is actually true, but there's this theory that the reason why people don't live as long as they used to is because God actually changed the core molecular structure of the realm during that time. So, again, spitballing. But somebody said that if the core molecule of the world, which currently we have a carbon-based universe, so carbon is the root molecule, it is a less stable element, I guess you could say. Whereas if you had something like silicon as the core molecule, things would age slower, okay? This is all just theories I've read, but it's all, I'll get to what we're getting at here in a second. My theory is that in the time before the flood, humans lived an incredible long time because the cellular structure of the human body was more rigid, more resilient than it is, because the base molecule structure of the entire world was different. Then, after this change, the Lord made changes to the world that resulted in, yes, we cannot live as long as we used to. And I'm happy to have chat fill me in on more because I don't know everything. But my theory was that if what makes a Titan in the old world is this inculcation of angelic DNA into the human race, how come we don't see titanic giants like we used to, or we don't necessarily hear stories of creatures that are of the same scale? It's not uncommon to hear about a 10-foot Bigfoot, or some sort of a giant that reaches up to even 20 feet tall in some accounts throughout the 1800s. But finding something massive, hundreds of feet tall even, it just seems unrealistic in this time. And it makes me wonder if the reason why they're not as big as they used to be is because they don't have this cellular building blocks that they had to work with in the antediluvian world. Just a theory. Park that to the side. Looking at the world we have today, it's understood that the Nephilim must still exist. Between the cryptids and the Bigfoot and all the other strange, mysterious sightings and things that people are accounting for in this country and around the world, there's obviously something out there. My theory is that it's not as complicated as we think, but that there are actually still remnant populations of these non-human, essentially Nephilim. Now, obviously, these are not the same Nephilim which is described in the Genesis account. Those would be the original Titan giants. But what we have today, I've heard other terms for them. I think some have referred to them as Eliod. I could be wrong. But the idea is, and this is also recorded in Manichaeism and Book of the Giants and such, that the secret to creating the Nephilim was not lost in history because somebody recorded it. And a lot of people attribute the current state of Nephilim in the realm, or whatever you want to call them, to being like a second wave of an incursion. I believe that's true. And one of the theories is that one of Noah's sons is responsible for this. I don't know who they say it is. I'm not going to point fingers. But they say that one of Noah's sons is the way that they came back into the realm. And this is all, again, this is spitballing here. But the theory is that it's not that one of Noah's sons was directly responsible for it, but that they actually stumbled upon a tablet, and that the tablet contained the secrets to how to essentially replicate this satanic incursion into the world. And it's believed, at least by myself and some others, that he actually recorded the information, but that he wasn't involved in, one of Noah's sons recorded it, but that he wasn't actually involved in re-inculcating this, invasion into the world. At some point in history, from the time of the flood to the time of Christ Jesus, there was a resurgence of these monsters, these entities. And I think that's pretty well understood by the way the ancient cultures of the world worship these ancestral spirits, whether it's ancient Egypt or Babylon or even potentially into Rome and Greece, the worship of these deities and such. It goes on all throughout history. And it helps add another angle into the mission of Christ coming into the world, because he isn't just here to save us from our sins and our iniquity, but that there's also a material threat. There is this empire and their royal family working against us in the world. And so what I'm getting at in the long run is that I believe that for many years now, since the time of this millennial reign and since its end, that Satan has been released upon the earth, that we're living in what could be described as Satan's little season. And in this time, I believe it's true that there are some of these creatures living among us in the public. But I think that there are also many, many more of them who are not living among us in the public. And this is where my theory comes in, that there's a subterranean Nephilim horde. Now, this is where we get into the good stuff right here. So you guys have probably heard about, Mount Shasta and the supposed secret underground commune in Mount Shasta. There's also a ton of research into the concept of Agartha and ancient subterranean tunnel networks. So my understanding is that the United States has the biggest military budget in the world. And on top of that, we also lose trillions of dollars without explanation. And before anyone asks questions, the biggest terror attack in history happens. It's all very suspicious. I think that we get caught up in the weeds sometimes because we in the conspiracy theory world tend to run into ideas about the United States using, human trafficking networks underground and stuff. And it's a very touchy subject. And I'm not saying that's not happening, but I think that what we're dealing with is something far larger than that. Not to take away from the horrors of such a thing, but I think that accounts for a small part of what's going on. I think that we are essentially working as a slave class, not just in the United States, but all around the world, to supply infrastructure, power, and even food for the true ruling class of the world, which is currently the enemy, the royal family and the genetic line of Satan. And the way I see that is that after the cataclysm, the rapture, the mud flood, Armageddon, so to speak, that took place at the end of that 1,000-year reign of Christ, the world fell into a sort of power vacuum. And those people who were left behind either by choice or by virtue, or maybe there was no rapture at all, I don't know. But there were people still here, okay? And those people had to figure out what to do with a newly changed world, one that had been for 1,000 years living under the iron rod of Christ, that now is changed. People have to come to terms with this new reality. And I think that during that 1,000 years, these creatures in the realm that were not welcome found a new place to live. I think that as Christ's kingdom is expanding across the world in his time, the beings and entities and their followers and their servants, whoever they are, they probably fled out regionally at first, but over the years they were likely pursued, and as the territory expanded, the entire realm is Christ's, not part of it. So it's my belief that they likely created underground, basically shelters, hideouts, and that they lived there throughout the millennial reign. And I believe that when the millennial reign came to its close, that these creatures kind of poked their head up out of the ground and started looking around. And you hear a lot of these stories, of Native American tribes especially. They talk about their own origins, being that they were living in underground shelters, essentially, with their ancestors, and that the ancestors brought them to the surface. And a lot of these ancestor spirits that they describe are essentially what you would consider to be the spirits of the Nephilim. A lot of times they're described in the exact way that we would describe Nephilim as, terrifying, fair-skinned, red-haired, scary-looking creatures. And, by this time, a lot of them are spiritual. Most of the stories refer to these ancestors as being spiritual. It's not that they exist in a physical form necessarily, but we do know that in the early days of the discovery of North America, certain characters came to the United States. I think Ferdinand Magellan is a good example in the 1500s, I believe. And there are accounts from his journalist who went with him. I wish I could remember his name at this time. But anyway, he accounted for sightings of giants. And it's actually some of the most traditional American lore of the discovery of giants is the early settlers in the United States having encounters with, massive creatures. Not just something like you would describe as Bigfoot, but even members of certain tribes who are massive. I wish I could remember the name right now. There's a famous giant of one of the Native American tribes who is not necessarily contested. It's considered to be a true story. He's just absurdly large. And we write that off as being normal, that someone is 7'5". I'm not trying to insinuate that NBA players are Nephilims. I'm just saying that it's a little out of the ordinary, and it starts to become something that we should squint at when we look at it. Like, how are you encountering, in a world of 5'6" conquistadors, and you encounter an 8 tall Native American gentleman? It's a little bit suspicious, a little strange. So my theory is that we have this population of the entities that are the members of this satanic family, but they're not passing as people. They're not normal enough in the sense that they could just live among us as someone who's just a strangely tall person or a strangely, you know what I'm saying, right? They don't fit in. A Sasquatch doesn't fit in. And so they live in these national parks, is my theory. And every once in a while, one of these things gets curious and comes out to the borders of their territory and sniffs around. And I think that's how we have sightings. That's how we have encounters with these things. And I don't think that it's a mystery to our government at all. I think that we're actually being staged for some kind of a final endgame here, which has to do with a lot of what you've talked about in your theories about the return of the Jerusalem and what that would do to the public in the world if, as the Bible prophesies, that Christ returns and with it he has this massive, 1,500 mile wide golden Jerusalem city that's coming in the clouds, right? So we know it's descending from the sky, so to speak. And that to me just sounds like the exact depiction of a mothership, right? And you've talked about at length, and I think it's the best discussion that is had about, when we're being theoretical and stuff. Mm-hmm. Just talking about the idea that, what would humanity do if all of a sudden there was a giant golden mothership in the sky that everybody could see? And, we talk about the implications of that. And what if it really is God, What if Christ really has returned with a giant millennial capital kingdom city, And we have, we can get caught up in the weeds about whether or not it's the second coming or it's another return or anything like that. But just at its very surface, at its core, the idea of a New Jerusalem is very alien to the world we live in today. That if some city like that came down from the sky, it would be a lot for normal people to swallow. And I think that obviously it would be the narrative of the enemy that if that really were Jesus, to turn us against him, right? It even says that after the 1,000 years has expired, Satan is released to deceive the nations in the four corners of the earth. And part of that is to unite us against God for this sort of final fight that may or may not have occurred already. I don't know. But my theory is that we will see this massive UFO in the sky at some point. Maybe not in our lives, but humanity will see it. And when that happens, it's not in Satan's plan for us to just go quietly into the dark, so to speak. I doubt that he will simply surrender based on his attitude. He, they, Satan, whatever. The corporation of evil, so to speak. I think that what we're looking at is an end game that's being set up on us that is so impactful that we won't be, it's like even the very elect will be deceived, so to speak, as the Bible says. Now, I have to be a little bit careful about how I say this, but we experienced what I would like to consider to be the dry run of the situation, which is related to the thing we're not allowed to talk about, which is that the world was in the last few years put through a very strange social and geopolitical thing, Yeah. And that is the thing, you guys know, the 19 thing. And so what happened was we all went through that, and we saw a lot of sides of humanity that I don't think we were, I mean, we may have been in denial about it. Like, I think that as a kid, I always used to believe, as an American, you know, you kind of think that, especially growing up in the post 9/11 world, it was like, you know, behind every blade of grass is an American with a gun. And the idea is that, oh, you know, nothing bad can happen here because there's too many good people here who will fight to prevent it from happening, you know. But you get older and you realize that that's not the case, you know. People just want to be left alone, and they're not going to die on a hill like some movie, you know, for principle. It's hard to see that happen in the world. So the state of America today is not really one that is the same as I believed it to be. So it just tells me what I already know, which is that the United States is, like many other countries, part of the same plan, that we're under the control of the same unified force that's working against us. And if there really is this satanic deception going on, this little season, it would stand to reason that they would not want us to go up the ramp and enter Christ's UFO, so to speak. So I think that one of the things we'll see is that when this, you know, event was taking place in, you know, 2019-20, and the masks and all that stuff that was going on, that was like a litmus test for humanity. Are we going to follow the rules, or are we not going to follow the rules? And it was a way for them to measure the response of the general public. How much fear do we monger, and how much control does it have? How much control do we still wield over the general public? What are they willing to do in the scope of fear and control? And obviously we saw an enormous amount of dissent. People like myself and many others were asking hard questions that weren't supposed to be asked, and looking into things we weren't supposed to look into. And we learned a lot about this, you know, viral thing that happened. And it caused us to have, you know, a different perspective than most. And I think that one of the things they're targeting is to create something even more terrifying than the implication, but the actual threat. So that even those of us who are resistant to propaganda and fear-mongering, even we are affected by it. And this is where my theory comes in. At the end of the day, Satan knows that the story ends a certain way. I think everybody knows. In the end, God will win, and his way will be the way. You know, he will prevail. His will prevail on earth, just as it is in heaven. And so with both sides in this cosmic battle understanding that the world is going to end a certain way on a certain day, and we may not be privy to that, but it doesn't change the reality of things. And so for Satan, as wretched as a entity and group of entities as it is, you know, they embody everything that's wrong in the world. At the end of the day, we look at each other as humans and say, it doesn't matter where you came from or where you live or what language you speak, we're all people. We're all made in the image of God. We're all out here for a mission that he created us for. But these things are not. And the enemy doesn't think of his people the way God thinks of his children. These are expendable beasts at the end of the day. And so when the day comes that there's a massive UFO in the sky and people don't know what to do about it, and they want to turn us against them, they already have what they need. For the last 60, 70 years in the United States, they've been propagandizing the American public and the rest of the world with the idea that there are extraterrestrial, outside of the planet entities, right? Aliens. And they have started with the whole, there's nothing to see here. And that made people suspicious. But then they admitted it. And over the last 20 years, the United States has been telling everybody, yeah, there's vessels, we don't know what they are. We don't know who's piloting them. We don't know where they're coming from. And they're really whipping everybody up. They've essentially admitted aliens are real and there's nothing we can do. They can turn off our nuclear silos at will. That's a scary thought. So my theory is that they will eventually be forced to play this sort of endgame trump card on the people. Because if people see a massive UFO, that breaks all the chains of, you know, everything that we thought, all our preconceived notions are destroyed. You know, we might try to believe that's a mothership from the Galactic Federation based on some things we read online or something, but that's not going to be the final verdict. All the cameras in the world are going to be pointed at that thing at the same time. All stations, all influencers, everyone all at once telling us what to think about it. And when that situation is created, it's no different than the experiment we went through a few years ago. The difference is that even though that mothership, that Jerusalem, whatever it is, may be for our benefit in the grand scheme of things, It isn't for the benefit of the enemy that it's here or that it exists. So with that being said, I believe that what we'd probably discover is that they would use advanced technology against us, as they do in the modern age with the technology we have access to now. I would not be surprised to see them create some sort of a deception surrounding this mothership. Like you said, the idea that there would be, advanced craft that we don't understand doing harm to us, right? And they can say, look, this is the Jerusalem or whatever. They probably won't call it that, but the entity ship has released small ships and now they're vaporizing towns with directed energy weapons and people are afraid. But it's like I said, if it doesn't happen to you, people aren't usually as well affected by it at the end of the day. You tell people there's this dangerous threat, but people still don't believe it. They still lean over the edge, even though they say don't lean over the railing, And so this is where I think that the end game, the trump card, comes in. This is the implication that a saucer can fly over or a triangle can fly over your house and melt your house with a ray gun is pretty scary. But for most normal people, it's just like what's going on in the Middle East. There are actual missiles flying into people's neighborhoods. And people are actually experiencing the terror of that. But even though we know it's true, all the way over here, it's hard to be actually empathetic for that. Even in my purest of heart about it, I do feel bad for these people, but I'm not sitting here shaking in my boots about it because there aren't physically missiles flying over my house. And so that's just a known human thing. It doesn't make you a bad person. It's just hard to make yourself care about things that aren't affecting you personally. That's it requires some spiritual maturity to have that sort of empathy for other people. But in this kind of an instance where they need people to be afraid, they need it to be up close and personal. And that's why I think that the ultimate goal is to release this Nephilim horde upon the people of the earth and create some sort of a terror event the world has never seen before. Something that, like Reagan used to preach about, the idea that an extraterrestrial, otherworldly threat could face us in this time of great division and everything. But that the threat against us, like I said, we're all people, different nationalities, different religions, different languages, but we're all still people. And then all of a sudden there's something here that isn't people, and it's trying to kill us. And that's exactly what the world needs, right? To unite together under one new banner for whatever the goal may be. And I think it's highly possible that we've been feeding these things for decades, centuries even. People go missing in the woods and nobody ever knows what happens to them. Like, how many of those people became a snack? It's a scary concept. I don't know for sure that that's the case, but when I see it plugged into the lore of things like Gears of War, I see predictive programming. Gears of War takes place at the end of a great human conflict. They call it the Pendulum Wars. Humanity's been fighting each other on like a World War scale for some time, two major factions at that point. Kind of like what you see with like NATO and the BRICS countries in the United States today, or, in the world today. The United States is not the whole world. It's not what I meant. But anyway, so you see this like division happen and humanity gets really worn down by the conflict. Humans always divided, humans always fighting, and humanity's kind of at this breaking point. And then when humanity's at this breaking point, these monsters show up. And that is the thing that basically galvanizes humanity as a single faction, united against this one external threat. And I can just imagine nothing better than to take the humanity we have today and introduce them to all these ideas of extraterrestrials and, beings from other dimensions, fast, advanced spacecraft and technologies that we can't comprehend, only just to prepare us for that when something we can't explain shows up and they can tell us what we need to believe about it instead of what we should really know. Just like everything else we see in our world, with so many things having been manipulated from our history to our traditions, our culture. These things have been changed right before our eyes. And I think that we're going through kind of a long-term grooming and propaganda process that was preparing us for this inevitable end event where Christ will come back to reclaim the throne of the earth. It's an inevitability. And I think that as sort of a scorched earth, final endgame strategy for Satan, he wants to essentially terrify humanity into siding against God, against our own better judgment, against what's right for humanity and against what's right for the entirety of the realm. Mm-hmm. So that's my grand Nephilim theory, and there's more to it than that, obviously, but I've just been rambling for so long. I feel like I should let you get a word in edgewise at this point.
No, well, you know, it's like when you get going, it's I don't want to interrupt flow because I get into it myself. So I'm just gonna let you get it all out, and then I'll bring some points in as we comb through the things you said. And yeah, the Nephilim horde thing, the Gears of War. I used to play Gears of War all the time when it first came out. I was crab walking all over the place, you know, glitching away with my shotgun, going around corners, playing it live, and I was there, you know. And that's no one probably knows what I'm talking about unless they played the game, but yeah, it was
a generational thing.
It was definitely a generational thing, you know, and the story is just perfect predictive programming, as you clearly explained. It's, like I said, humanity at the brink of just breaking down, exasperated through constant wars over resources. It's like golden fuel, basically, that they want, isn't it?
Yeah. Emulsion. Yep.
Emulsion, yeah, and the planet's full of it, you know, and it turns out it's incredibly toxic, though, and is poisoning all the lizard people who live underground, called the locusts.
Exactly.
You know? So the locusts,
not a fan.
Yeah, so the locusts burst out of the ground onto the Earth's surface to escape the mutated scourge of locusts, which have been changed by the emulsion. But humanity just sees it as we're being attacked by an unknown force that we didn't even know existed from underneath our own feet, you know? So while humanity was killing each other on the surface, this inner war was going on inside the planet, you know, between these locusts. Yeah. And it's like, in a way, it's trying to give you like slight sympathy for the locusts, because even the locusts were created by humans, it turns out. It gets really complicated. The story gets so convoluted with each like consistent episode. But even that's getting into human hybridization with these creatures. Their queen is a human. You know what I mean? It's kind of because they were created by humans to begin with. There's like a genetic engineering gone wrong situation. It's a complete mess. And even emulsion, the liquid gold, is like ichor of the blood of the gods, but it's also that chrome thing that's coveted so much by the elites, that golden fluid. You know what I mean? It's all kind of mashed in this one video game 12-year-olds are playing on mass. You know what I mean? It's kind of
the impact of that, right?
Yeah, you want to talk about programming? It's definitely all there, and they called them the locusts. I mean, come on, not even like funny. Right. It's like it's an end times biblical scenario they're trying to explain here, but it's kind of the galvanizing, bringing humanity together situation was the common enemy that comes at the end of a war. And that's every film ever about aliens has ever existed in like, the history of time. It's even the Lord of the Rings, the Uruk-hai horde that's going through, you know, the Middle Earth, and then, you know, you have Gimli and you know, the elf. It's like, I never thought I'd fight next to an elf or something like that. It brought all the races together as a common cause and an enemy, you know, to fight against this evil mutated human horde of some kind. And that's basically what the Nephilim are, and their descendants are, at least, as well, because you kind of hit on it earlier, didn't you? The Eliud, the Elio, or the Nephilim.
Yeah, something like that. I'm of course not the expert, but something like that.
I think it's the Book of Jasher that lays that out. I could be wrong. It's one of these, either Jubilees or Jasher or something like that, or the Book of Giants even. But it explains that even the Nephilim had their own children. So then their children are like a quarter angel. And then their children's children had children with human women. And they're like an eighth angel. But the OG Nephilim are like half human, half angel. They were the massive titan beast monster things that were wiped out, you know. But they had children that were still knocking about, that kind of infecting humanity, you know, just kind of seeping their way in. Which is another reason why humanity decided to manipulate themselves. And rather than being born divine, because your parents are half angel, humans thought, well, I need an edge. How am I supposed to survive in this world full of like demigods? You know, I'm just a pathetic human with nothing, you know, no powers whatsoever. So they give themselves the armor of a beetle by mixing themselves with bugs. Give me an exoskeleton, you know what I mean? Something like that. Yeah. And that's when mutants start appearing. You know, X-Men that used to be humans, and now there's something else. And I think that's the cryptid phenomena. But like you said, when the millennial reign kicks in, it's kind of, where do they go?
Yeah.
Where do they go?
You're now an illegal being, like an illegal species. Like, what are you supposed to do? And it sounds terrible when you put it in that perspective, which is, I think, part of the programming element, right? Is to have us enter the Star Wars cantina and see all these different aliens and think, well, we're all just different creatures, but we're all valuable. We're all the same in the universe. But that's just not the truth. Mm-hmm. That takes away from the sovereignty of God who made this world. This is his world for his plan, and we're his creatures. These like delineations or whatever they are is essentially like a mad scientist is playing with a chemistry lab and it doesn't make it right. It's two wrongs don't make a right. You know what I mean?
Well, but the programming even for that is around the sympathy for the mutants, right? And it's a real thing, especially in the past 10 years. They've been pushing through the media. I think there's a show called, is it Sweet Tooth? I think it's called Sweet Tooth. And it's about a world full of human hybrid chimeraed children who are appearing randomly. Like they're being born, you know. I think it's called Sweet Tooth or something like that. And it's the main thing is a boy with antlers. It's like a deer human hybrid. He's got horns, basically. It's like,
oh yeah,
I think that's what it is. And it's about like the bigotry of humanity against these different beings that are turning up. You know what I mean? Or something like that. And it's literally propaganda, sympathy for the mutant devil. You know what I mean? It's kind of like, and if you don't accept this new addition to humanity's genome, you're just a racist bigot of some kind, basically. You know what I mean? But even then, there's another show which was like some Netflix nonsense. I can't remember what it's called, but it was about fairies and gnome folk living in the 1800s side by side with humans. And they're like a denigrated lower class of species who are like abused and racially slurred and all these type of things. You know what I mean? And it's about like, you know, trying to build a relation. I think, I'm guessing this always happens. I haven't even watched it, but I'm going to have a good guess. They fall in love with a human or something.
Oh, of course. It always has to do with that. Or there's like the District 9 take, you know about the movie District 9?
Oh, yeah.
Where it's like, oh, these aliens are being discriminated against by these terrible, horrible humans. And that one guy, I guess he gets bit or cut by one, and so he starts to turn into one of the aliens. And then it's like, well, see, we're no different than they are. All it takes is a little bit for you to be just like them. Like we gotta transcend this thinking, you know. It's like they always trying to imply that aliens are good. I was talking about it on the stream yesterday. There was a Forbes magazine cover, and it had this like, you know, kind of androgyne person, and they were like, as an alien. It was like an alien thing, and they were like, they're here and they're hot. And it was like, oh no.
How human? Like, how human of us? Oh, aliens are here. Yeah, but would you though? Like,
that's exactly what you're getting at.
Out of 10, what are you going to give them? You know what I mean? That's the first thing. Our humanity, collectively degenerate, like gross collective humanity, would just instantly go there. It's kind of like
we've never had more single young men in this world, so I would not be surprised. You
like
know?
Aliens, you say? Yeah, but are they hot though? Like that's all we'd care about is like degenerates. Like it's just the world's falling apart. But I've always said, you know, people are so prepped for aliens. Like, they're so bored with the mundane day-to-day of reality. Because that's what it's really, the conspiracy is a conspiracy of creating apathy. They're making people so dejected and run down and stuck in a loop of just eat, sleep, work, repeat, pay taxes, die. You know what I mean? And it's kind of like, life is boring. It's mundane and boring and forever declining and getting worse. People are just begging for aliens to turn up. Something exciting, please happen.
Right. And the attention spans, like everyone's become a doom scroller with a rat brain, and we're just like 2 seconds, 3 seconds, and we're skipping to the next thing. And I see myself do it from time to time, and it's like, man, I really got to consciously not allow my energy to be lost doom scrolling down feeds because it's not profitable, you know?
Let's get back to District 9, because you covered that quite a lot when you were talking in the original stream. And you hit quite a few great points about what it would really be like if the mothership did just appear like District 9. That's what happens, isn't it? You know, they just appear. And the initial reaction, like you say, is shock. And people would just run to the shops and start stockpiling toilet rolls, and it just become this huge initial, you know, quick, just get your friends, get your family, get to the bunkers, hunker down, panic. What do we do now? You know, a lot of people are not spiritually or emotionally mature enough or prepared for that to happen. Like if boom, a mothership the size of the sky appears above your head like that, people would die just from that alone. The shock would kill them. Like it would be
I agree.
It would be a catastrophic moment, a paradigm shifting horror of unspeakable things. You know what I mean? So like,
there'd certainly be riots and chaos in the streets. Like it would be a definite
initially
situation.
But then as time goes on, it would get boring.
Yep.
And it would become,
Exactly.
and like you said in District 9, it's kind of like, well, now it's like a refugee camp. Everyone's sick of it. There's like government organizations created to keep them in line and stop them from leaving the place because they're just nuisance, keep stealing stuff. It's kind of like, it's just
Yeah,
like,
it's really crazy. It goes from being this like impossible situation to being very realistic. I think that's one of the things that makes District 9 such a terrifying, presentation is that it takes something as crazy as an alien invasion and it really rationalizes it and makes it very tangible. Like here we are in South Africa. That's where it decided to appear, if I'm not mistaken. And the
yeah.
world governments are all involved, but at the end of the day, it's just kind of a standstill piece of, event. There's this now we have an alien ship here that's like it's no different than like Mount Rushmore at some point, and people are coming over there to visit and everything. But it's the normalization that even if the movie only was just to make us feel like that, like maybe it isn't so weird that there's an alien ship at all. And then if it lands here, they're just trying to fix their ship and they haven't figured out how to fix it. So it's stuff like that it's like the introduction of ideas that wouldn't arrive in your mind initially. Like we talk about predictive programming. If you saw a flying saucer appear, you'd be like instantly afraid. It's like a horrifying thing from unknown outer space. But like if you see something after having watched District 9, it's like, well, maybe they're just stuck here. Like maybe their ship's just broken. Like maybe they're not trying to invade us. Like maybe they actually came to bring us gifts. Who knows? Maybe they're benign.
Confusion is also the game here as well, because like I said, if a giant mothership does appear, it's not evil. It's more likely, biblically grounded in speaking here, to explain that, and Christians need an explanation for the giant mothership. Like we need to know, like, cause that's not in the
Right.
book, it doesn't say. And then the enormous spaceship appeared over like the Middle East, and it doesn't say that in the book. Like we don't have that in Revelation to explain. But what we do have, we know that there'll be this time where New Jerusalem is on earth, descended from heaven, Mount Zion, and there'll be a time of peace and rulership of Christ for 1,000 years. And we know it ends, so I assume the thing disappears too. So if anything does appear, it's probably that. That's the closest thing we have, biblically speaking, to explain away what it is. And like I said, it would explain the enormous push through media for over 100 years to say aliens, mothership equals aliens, flying saucers and discs equals aliens, the evil malevolent, we are the slaves, aliens, it's that kind of thing. And like I said, like Zachariah Sitchin, Nibiru has come back into the solar system on its 25,000 year cycle, and it's time for them to mine the Earth for more resources before they disappear out of our orbit again. It's kind of
That implication is just terrifying because it's so rationalizable. I guess that's not really the point is that people can make sense of that, right? They can say, well, we need stuff, so why wouldn't somebody else need stuff? And then at least give some motivation beyond like these are malevolent entities from essentially another dimension that hate us and want control of our realm. That's a hard one, I think, for normal people to stomach.
It's only difficult because they do believe in vast infinite universes, planets in space, and resources and limitations and energy, and that example of scarcity must be applicable and scalable to all other universes and places. It's kind of because of the lie of vast infinite universes in space. If everyone knew it was a very finite enclosed system and we truly are all that is, and there isn't billions of planets everywhere, it would you would see an event like that and you would only be able to explain it as spiritual, interdimensional, even if you don't want to believe in God or the biblical narrative. And there's a lot of new age types out there who do believe in a stationary enclosed system. They haven't accepted it as a biblical model, but they know it's there. How do they explain aliens and flying saucers? What's their explanation? And they say, well, it's interdimensional ascended masters manifesting from the fifth dimension or something into our visual realm. And it's kind of, they have all these other...
probably, sort of, right?
But
I don't
that's
know.
one explanation of thousands. There's no consistency because they don't know. They don't have an answer, but the Bible kind of explains it. It explains it very well. It's Ephesians 6:12. We don't battle against flesh and blood, but spiritual wickedness in high places, basically. Hidden dark forces in realms we can't comprehend, messing with us all the time. And, you get all these paintings, don't you, from like the 1500s of like Nuremberg, which show like battles of like spaceships in the sky firing lasers at each other and stuff like this. And it's kind of... So some weird stuff has happened in the past.
What were they thinking? You know, it was just a cool idea for a painting, or are we talking about something we've seen before, right? Like,
Oh, they were pretty adamant. Like, yeah, that there's an enormous black spear in the sky. Like, and it was like they repeatedly drew it over and over again, and orbs and spheres everywhere. You know, and like the stars are falling out of the sky, and it's like we try and explain that away. It's like, oh well, they went through a meteor shower. It's like these are not drawings of meteor showers. These are like purple, red, blue orbs flying all over the place. You know what I mean? And the sky's turned brown. Everything looks odd and like psychedelic and trippy. And it's like, oh, are we prepared for that to happen again, locally or globally? I think if it does, people are kind of programmed to assume we're under attack.
Right.
Space. It's got to be space or something like that. And
well, when they warmed us up, you know, we got the Space Force here now and our new branch of the military. So we're here to enforce the space. I don't know. Who knows what that implies? Like, I would imagine they would be the first on the scene to justify their budget. Like, we're a Space Force is on the job, you know?
Space Force. But then, well, get back onto the Nephilim horde angle. Like, it's valid because it's kind of like, look, we have all these accounts of tribes dealing with monsters until recent times. You get these oral traditions from the North Americas dealing with the red-haired, white-skinned, cannibalistic tribes warring with these natives, you know, and it's kind of, those stories don't sound that old. They've survived through time through oral tradition, but it sounds like they're talking about relatively recent times. Like, it wasn't that long ago. And you know it's not that long ago because there's one account, and I wrote about it in the book, but there's a woman who, up until like the late 1800s, early 1900s, when she died, she was doing tours to universities in America, doing talks, talking about her family and how they warred against red-haired, white-skinned giants. And what they do, they scalp them once they kill them and take the hair, this enormous sheet of hair, glowing red hair, and they make a dress out of it called a mourning dress. And it's like this shawl they put out, like a cape of some kind, and she was taking it on tour, showing people this enormous lock of red hair turned into like a cardigan, basically. And it's kind of, and it's documented, you know, it's in the books, it's in the papers, people talked about this. That can't have been that long ago. They were dealing with them then, really, right. You know, and said, oh, my grandfather gave me this, and he gave it to his grandfather. So you're saying maybe 300 years ago, max? You know, this thing
always seeming like about 300 years ago,
something like that,
yeah. Something like that.
But they're all the stories always seem to end with, they were driven underground, they were wiped out, they were genocided, they were killed, they were, even like the Lovelock Cave giants, the Paiutes dealt with, they went hid in a cave and they covered up the entrance of the cave and set fire to it to use the smoke to kill them. But once it was clear, they didn't find any remains. They clearly went further into ground. They went under, they went down. Where? I don't know. But maybe it's like you said, when the millennial reign was kind of coming to an end, like they were kind of peeking themselves back out, and maybe that's where some of these skirmishes come from. Do you know what I mean? Like, oh, we'll try and settle again. Now the millennial reign's over, but these native tribes are like, nah, get off our land, and they ran back. Exactly. They ran back into the cave. You know what I mean? And disappeared again because it's kind of like, okay, it's not ready yet. They're not ready for us yet. Okay, so maybe that's what the agenda's been for the past 300 years: prepare people for them to come back up. And we're seeing this sympathy for the mutant horde all throughout media these days. You know, introduce them as a scary thing at first, and then start warming people up to the idea of them through these other medias in the future. It seems it's really odd. But yeah,
they have to have a class system too, right? There has to be some that are of higher quality and some that are of lower quality, because it's just like the nature of everything in the world. You have like some that are of, like, I guess you could say better genetic makeup or better familial background, like they're of a particular royal family, or they could be more of like a beast and not as important. And that's kind of where I get the whole idea of the expendability of the horde, because at the end of the day, you know, Satan is getting cast into the lake of fire with everybody else. And so he has this whole horde at his disposal that if they're in any way destroyed or killed or hurt or whatever, it doesn't really matter to him. So he can employ them all in different ways. Like some of them probably look just like you and I. They're the giants of Norse mythology and such, who are like, oh, well, she's a half giant and she just looks like a normal person, but she has the DNA inside her, so to speak. And I think that we have examples of that in our culture today. I can't point to a single politician, I mean, only as a joke, and be like, that guy is not a human being. Like, there's no way. That guy is too evil. There's no way. But, you know, there has to be some truth to that, that there are some of them that, like I've mentioned, are more like passing and can live among us and take on government roles. Perhaps they're disguised with technology, or they just look like you and I. But then there also must be some that are more monstrous, you know,
Yeah, well,
and that allows them to kind of introduce them in the way they like, you know.
Yeah, well, I remember talking with Joe about this ages ago, and it was on a random talk like this, just off the cuff, and I ended up clipping a scene because it was called the inhuman influence. And it's this idea that, you know, people don't want to kill other people. Even in war scenarios,
No way.
it's no one wants to be there shooting at the other guy. Like, neither side wants to be doing any of it.
Not a
There's-
healthy person.
No, and there's plenty of stories from like World War One and probably even today where they were firing over the trenches, but they were like not aiming. They weren't really aiming, and they were purposely missing shots on purpose because they don't want to shoot that guy at the like 50 meters away from them. You know what I mean?
You can see him up there.
Yeah, it's kind of, they don't want to do it, you know, and it's kind of like that story at Christmas time. You know, they dropped their differences and walked into no man's land and played football or something like that. Now, I don't know if that is even true, who knows, but if it is, it's this idea that these people don't want to be killing each other. They're fighting wars on behalf of men who aren't willing to go fight their wars for themselves, you know what I mean? They're just conscripts, they're dragged into it, they had no choice, it's this or prison, you know, it's this or treason, it's that type of thing. And I don't think humans do to other humans what these elites are doing to us. I don't think it's in humanity to do that to their fellow man. We have the conscience to not do that, you know, and it's even if we do it, the guilt would kill us. It would eat us alive, and but these people don't seem to have any of that. And you can say, oh well, it's psychopathy. I think it's something else. I think this is not more than just a lack of empathy due to some neurological condition. I think the only explanation is that they're not human. The
human possessed synergy, like they're like just fully at one with evil. Like they don't even have a conscience about it anymore. They may not even be people, like we're suggesting.
This is what we're suggesting. Yeah, maybe they're not actually people. And I've always been careful not to go down that route because it's kind of like, how are we supposed to tell the difference? I don't want people going out there saying, well, get me my gun, I'm going to go hunt these guys down. That's a bad idea. Because
I saw a little presentation somebody made where it was like a short film about it, and this guy like takes this pill, and after he takes the pill, he starts seeing things for as they really are, you know what I mean? And he like goes crazy, like shoots his boss because his boss is like a monster, and his girlfriend is all freaked out, thinks he's crazy, and he's like desperate to get her to figure out that it's real. And then at some point she takes the pill and she sees monsters too. And it leaves you kind of wondering, like, was the pill the thing that created the monsters in people's mind? Or was the pill the thing that made it so that people could see things as they really were? Just a very interesting little short film. And it's one of those things where, and I talked about this on the podcast yesterday too, human nature is, like you said, it's not in our nature to want to kill each other. But for some reason, when we identify these creatures that are not people, it's like we're able to put that to the side. You know, like Nephilim Death Squad. It's something that reminds me of being like a little boy playing with guns in the yard, like plastic guns, whatever, or a stick that looks like a gun. It's like you have this nature that it's like, you would never really want to hurt anybody as a little kid, but then it's like, oh no, a monster. Like, well, I can shoot a monster. You know what I mean? It's like we realize there's these monsters in the world, and all of a sudden guys are signing up to go fight them. You know what I mean? It's just human nature. Let's get rid of these monsters. And I think that's kind of the biggest threat of their, you know, exposure to us, is that most people would probably instinctively recognize them as an incredible threat to our existence. And that we would be like, oh, we can't coexist with these things, especially when they're potentially intertwined with this oligarchic leadership of the world that does these terrible things to us. It's like, these people are creatures and their faction is capable of great evil. We're not the same as them, you know?
It's the unifying force, isn't it? It's and this is why I'm saying it's so convoluted and obviously all scripted as well, that they're kind of like revealing themselves. Look how evil we are, guys. Look at we control you. Don't you want to do something about that? Ooh, look at us. Yeah. We're drinking blood and we're eating your children. It's kind of like, come on, we're so evil. Like we must be stopped. We're working with monsters beyond your comprehension. It's kind of and everyone's kind of slowly becoming aware of them. Like the cat's out of the bag, as you explained in your live stream. You know, it's kind of like we all we all know they're there. We all know they're pure evil, and it's not an accident. They want us to know they're there because they want that reaction. They're creating an enemy for us to unite against. But the
Perhaps they'll even... Oh, go ahead.
I'm saying, well, there's a solution they're also going to offer as well, because it's not
Yep,
going to be
that's
Christ defeating them. Some good aliens are going to turn up or something.
Yeah,
or, I don't know,
exactly.
or the world leader Maitreya is going to turn up and say, you know, stop fighting people. It's like and we'll help you defeat this evil scourge, and humanity can now ascend to the 10th level, as you explained. There's some convoluted nonsense story that'll...
So many possibilities.
Yeah, so I don't when they're revealing the evils, I'm not really they're built up to be destroyed. It's kind of like don't take the solution either. Like, this is a multifaceted, complicated, long con they're working on here, and it's going to be a huge spectacle when it goes down. And we're going to be like, the people are just going to be thrown to and fro. We're not going to know what to make of what's going on. We're going to be so confused. It's like, who's the good guys? Who are the bad guys? We don't even... I thought aliens were bad, and now suddenly these aliens have turned up and they're helping us, and it's kind of like...
We'll be on stream. We'll be reacting live. We'll be like, guys, I don't know. We'll be like, they said they were our friends. I don't know.
Well,
That's the current announcement. They're saying they seeded us here. I don't know what to believe about that. Oh, you know what? This is what got me banned. I'm not going to say it, but I was joking about how they would tell us that we were, they created us, and that in order for us to come to the next level, they have to give us this thing. You know, they have to introduce us to the next thing so that we can be prepared for the next stage, whether it's to defend ourselves from the horde, or it's just so that we can rise to the next level of evolution and consciousness, you know?
Yeah, we'll call it, let's just say, Mark of the Beast. Let's just say a random name. Let's give it a name, you know what I mean?
I like that.
They'll offer something.
If we wrap it up like that, then it's not, we can be talking about anything at that point. So.
Well, they'll offer something to humanity as like a gift or a present, like I said, or like, you want to be like us? You want to join the Galactic Federation of spacefaring, super advanced intelligent beings? You need some upgrades, man. You gotta take the upgrades. You gotta, here they are. Like, be like us. Just take this thing. Just put this thing inside of you, and you'll be like us, And that's tantalizing to a humanity that has just gone through not only a brutal human war with a unnecessary loss of life, but then aliens turned up and brutalized us. A horrible, toothy, hideous horde has just burst out of the ground and eaten up a third of humanity while we're at it as well. It's kind of course humanity by that point, and you're like, yeah, please, just give me anything. Like,
right, and like they can come up anywhere, like anywhere in the world. A hole opens up and monsters come out. Like that would totally, like I said, that would galvanize humanity. No one would look at another person and think, they'd be like, dude, you and I are in the same boat. None of our other problems matter anymore, right? Well, it's actually funny. You know, you were saying like when we reach the end of a potential great war, it's like, doesn't that also kind of seem like where we're at today? Like that we're being kind of set up as, NATO and Russia continues to kind of accelerate. And now you've got what's going on in that portion of the Middle East over there as things are getting more and more exacerbated over there. And it's not to say that we've hit the day the earth stood still kind of thing. It's not like we've hit critical mass 1939 or whatever it is. But we're close, right? All the geopolitical and social things that are taking place, all these factors are the kinds of things you see happening in the culture outside of the actual kinetic war that takes place right after World War I, World War II, etc. We're kind of, as a world, like poised for some great conflict right now. I don't think that's like an original idea or anything. It doesn't guarantee that we will. But if we were to enter into some prolonged conflict on like a large scale, maybe not total war, but that wouldn't be surprising to me. I don't think most of our current generation would be surprised to see that we're going into yet another war. And that I'm not certain that is or isn't. I'm not trying to make a prediction here, but we could be right on track for this theory. We go into a war for the next few years, have some major loss and conflict, super, exhausted. Human race is tired from the situation. And then they reveal to us this like final kind of decision to make about whether we're going to believe the official narrative and side with the population of humanity, or if we're going to go off on some cult tangent about how no, that's God's UFO, and because we're going to seem insane if we detract from the narrative, worse than any sort of anti-injection person. You know what I mean? Like you're going to seem even more crazy than they ever did.
Absolutely. I mean, it's kind of like, are you still clinging on to your primitive cave desert dwelling book, while aliens are quite literally in front of us here right now, utterly proving your religion wrong, and you're still clinging on to this naive, stupid belief about your sky daddy. And it's that's what people are going to think. It's kind of like they're right here, and you're still talking about God. It's kind of like this utterly disproves your stupid backwards religion. And what do you do to people like? Well, they're traitors to humanity. We're under attack by aliens, and you're here.
You don't know that you could be an alien, right? Like only an alien would say that it was fine. Like only, you know what I mean? Like
you must be one of them. That's exactly what an alien would say.
Yeah, exactly.
It is like that, and obviously because the scenario I've talked about, and you said is if Jesus does rock up with New Jerusalem, this massive, like I said, like 1,500 kilometers by 1,500 kilometer wide, mile wide. I don't know. It's massive.
I don't know.
You know,
either.
It's so big. Anyone from Earth could look to the north and see it. It doesn't matter where you are. All eyes will see this thing. And then, like I said, the evil people release the horde. Everyone's going to think they're under attack because they're going to make the correlation and think there's a causation. They're going to make that fallacy. You know what I mean? It's going to think mothership suddenly under attack by monsters. They must be attacking us, and it's kind of the mothership will become the enemy. Like that inversion.
And who's to say they don't even stage it, right? They could bring some black triangles out and then tractor beam and drop some monsters down, and everyone's like, yo, what? They're dropping the monsters.
Release the UFOs we've been building since the 50s. Go. Like the flying saucers, let them
that
out.
Could be like the human element of the deception, right? Like the loyal humans who are serving Satan in this world, who are working in their various leadership positions installed throughout governments and influence positions. Those people all play their role too, right? So we have Christ arrives with his city, the Nephilim arrive with their horde, and humanity arrives with their deception playing in coordination with Satan's plan. And so all the rest of us who aren't in the know, so to speak, are exposed to this multi-tier deception that just makes it so difficult because you can't even question it. Just like with the last great deception we went through, even questioning it would get you, like in this case, removed from the platform. You know, it's not an original idea at all, but we know that they understand that us being able to freely communicate and theorize and share information is the greatest threat to their control scheme over the general public. And that's why things like discussing certain concepts is totally banned, a totally bannable offense, or at least in this case, they'll delete your content. So,
well, I still believe in that scenario, the initial war of the locusts, you know, of the Nephilim horde will be cut short, and it'll just suddenly end because something good will appear to save us. Like something, like I said, and it will be this Lucifer, light bringer of knowledge character, the betrayer, the human world teacher, with their army of, you know, intergalactic warriors. It's going to be something Star Trekky, you know,
Celestials.
Yeah, it's something Star Warsy type thing. You know, it's going to say we've come from other planets. We saw that your planet was in distress or something like that. We got your signal. Or something. I don't know. They'll have some stupid narrative, literally written by people in Hollywood, probably.
I wouldn't be surprised if they didn't say they were watching us, right? Like we've been your planet in quadrant sector Alpha Echo.
Well, they're already saying that in the crop circles, don't you remember?
Right.
They've been saying we've been watching you. The time is coming. Hold steadfast. We're watching. We'll keep you. Like people have been prepped for this idea, and it's so crap. Like it's so not even well done. It's so tacky. Like you watch it all and all these videos, and it's like I cringe watching them because it's like, come on. Like
it's funny. It's definitely a spell, right? Because I remember back in the day before I was a questioner of the narrative, I bought the narrative hook, line, and sinker 99.9% of the time because I didn't see any reason to question it. Like, well, that's good enough for me. I'm not the expert on moon landings or whatever, so you just kind of accept it for what it is. But then it's like you start to recognize the signature of the artist behind all the deceptions. It's like there's one law firm sending out all the cease and desist notices. It's like that with this deception. Every time you see something, it's like, what? The same guy is concocting all these plans. Like it literally feels like that. You got, are they tricking us about this? And it feels the exact same as the other thing they're tricking us about. You start to detect a pattern, you know?
Like how all the music in the music industry is written by like one guy. And you start to like, no, they're all the same.
And they all promote the same culture, right? They all give us all political parties. We're all divided about everything except for something. certain things that we're not supposed to talk about. But that's the point, right? Like it's like that's how you know when who's really pulling the strings, when it's like we're at each other's throats, we don't agree on anything except to send money to somebody that, you know what I mean? It's like, what, whose idea was that, you know? It's not good.
Well,
That's how you do.
I'm trying to
Game is
imagine.
rigged.
I'm trying to imagine this alien invasion event in like a not too distant future. Like and if you would, so the world leaders involved would be the current world leaders. Like,
Oh man,
and do you know what I mean? And let's just
it's a
say,
bad situation.
let's just say, you know, in America, let's say Trump wins. We don't know. I'm not predicting the future here. But let's just imagine that scenario. Let's do a what if situation. And then, like I said, XYZ, mothership turns up, alien invasion, the good guys turn up, the world leaders appeared, and he's teaching humanity to prepare for the next wave. We're going to prepare you for the next, they're coming back, you know what I mean? They're going to attack again, and I'm going to get you ready. Like, you can imagine how Donald Trump would diplomatically deal with that situation, because obviously he's in on it. He's there with it.
Oh yeah, I mean, how could you get in unless they selected you for the office, right?
That's
Like at
what I
that
mean.
level, it gets to the point where it's like, well, who's president? Not me or you. Like definitely one of the inside guys. I mean, it's amazing to have come to that point too. Like as an American, you know, 2016, Trump was like the best thing that could have happened for traditional America in people's mind. Anyway. But once the rubber hits the road, you find out it's not what it seems to be.
Was it
My
Trump
favorite-
who came up with Space Force? Wasn't that his thing?
Yes, that's also one of the reasons why I think it's so convenient, because it'll be like, oh, we're under attack. Luckily for you, I instituted Space Force, frankly. Like, you know what I mean? Like, that's like basically what we're expecting to see.
It'd be like, you know, I talked to the Maitreya, great guy. You know, he was telling me all these things. He has these great plans, and I think we should listen to him. He has some good ideas, you know. Like, if we try to convince the country, like, yeah, listen to this guy over here. Like, I think he knows what he's talking about, you know. Like, when I started Space Force, we were in communication with him. You know, we knew what was going on. It's kind of, he's been preparing for this day. You know, let's rally behind him and let's take the mark he's offering or whatever it is. Let's do Revelations 2.0 without realizing it. That's basically what's going to go down. Tribulation 2.0. But I mean, all this ends with fire coming down from heaven. Yeah, that's what the Revelation says. And what does that mean? Obviously, it's the judgment of God to basically just script over.
I like to kind of imagine it like the Raiders of the Lost Ark. You know how when they open up the Ark of the Covenant and then it gets them. That's kind of
the skin melts off everybody.
Yeah. Like maybe it doesn't come out of the box in this instance, but like, you know, like a fire from heaven comes down, like gets all the bad guys.
One cannot behold the glory of God without literally having the skin burn off of the skeleton type of situation.
Yeah, he's like, don't close your eyes, Marion. Don't look.
Well, who knows? But maybe. One interesting idea I got was I can't remember her name, but it was a woman who's a regular subscriber gave me this idea. But it's the idea that let's just say hypothetically the model of the Earth is the circle ice wall ring. Let's just say. I know there's many other models it could be, but let's just say that's the system. And they all have a treaty, don't they? Where they all have like a section of the big circle. What if they've been building weapons there that point to the center? Like a huge rim of just energy weapons just pointing to the middle. But what they would do is they would fire up and bounce off the firmament to come straight back down into the middle. It's kind of like a situation. It would look
that is a very interesting concept. But yeah, like using like the dome as some kind of a reflective surface for
or the atmosphere. Let's say the atmosphere. Okay, whatever.
Okay, yeah,
whatever, you know.
We don't want to imply that we think the Earth is flat or something preposterous like that.
Actually, whatever. However, anyone wants to explain this away, because that's how they use HARP technology. They use the atmosphere as a bouncing shield to, you know, mess with the land, you know, and cause. So what if they do in some way? What if, you know, like the fires we've been seeing where the blue roofs mysteriously aren't catching fire, you know, remember that whole thing? It's like, what if they were testing these weapons, seeing what they could do, you know?
That kind of stuff is exactly what I think that will play its role in this final deception, right? Like, it would make perfect sense for them to bring out alien saucers, have them vaporize something like the White House or something that was just like Independence Day, you know, something that really like is very cinematic for the news. So it's like, oh, but this was recorded on everyone's phone, so it's even more dramatic, right? Like it's some Cloverfield or something. Blow up the White House with energy weapons, and then that indicates that they have the destructive potential to take care of us. But then, right, we also introduce this monster horde that comes from the subterranean caverns, and then that puts us in like an actual compromised position where we have like their military technology. It's actually part of the description in the Gears of War thing, is it talks about that the Locusts were basically attacking using bioengineered weapons and stolen human technology. So there's an implication that these monsters, like, you know, I think we get carried away thinking sometimes that they're just, like I said, monsters, and they don't have some kind of a conscience or a sentience about them. And it's like, it's highly possible they have like drone armies in their thinking that got guns and stuff. Like, imagine how they could stack this threat against us. Like, it could be that we have no chance, and that would be a perfect way, right? You have giants who also have guns, like a military of monsters, even more so than just beasts, like attacking us aimlessly. But like in the case of this, these locusts are actually like it's a coordinated attack force. They're thinking about what they're doing.
It's a religious military organization as well.
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
They're like highly religious, aren't they? And they have like prophetic orders and leaders above them who are like high priests as well as just the commanders and chiefs, you know. And it's all revolving around the human queen, which is like the mother of all these monsters in the way. So she's like a siren basically. And it's kind of really like, it's like biblical concepts weaved all throughout the whole tale in that game. But yeah, for people who don't know, like, you just go and watch like a video summarizing the plot of this video game, and it's kind of, I wouldn't have considered it predictive programming then without knowing about the Millennial Kingdom angle, the little season stuff. This is what I mean. Since discovering that point of view, you see more programming now, what it was really all trying to do, don't you? Things are really clearly fitting into place. Like, so that's why that was a piece of propaganda. That's what it really was, you know. It's to prepare us for this coming war at the end of time, which involves a giant spaceship of some kind just popping up out of nowhere. It's so fantastical, isn't it? Could you imagine? Like, truly, I mean, just try and put ourselves in that very real possibility. Like, what would we do in the first instance? Like, I'm trying to prepare mentally for this possibility, you know, myself. And I've had a dream in the past, and I'm not trying to bore you all. Someone says I had a dream, and everyone's like, oh, you know,
go ahead. It's kind of, I love dream concept.
Summarize it very quickly. I was in a field behind my old house where I grew up, and it was a normal day. Other things were going on, political stuff in my own life and mind I was dealing with, but it all suddenly just stopped. The sky suddenly went black as though a veil was peeled back, but in the sky were big round red sigils that look like satanic pentagrams, hexagons, you know, enneagrams, like crazy things just floating in the sky, like hundreds of them. And in the dream, my heart stopped with fear. Like,
yeah,
do you know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
I didn't know it was a dream. As far as I was concerned, it's daylight, normal, fluffy white clouds, sun shining over there where it normally is, in a field I've lived and grown up in my entire life, you know, that I recognize. But then suddenly the sky turns black, covered in red, circular, glowing sigils, and it's kind of like, that's like flying saucers above us. And we're looking underneath the flying saucer ships, you know what I mean? And that's the way the lights work. And it's kind of, if I feel like, you know, the dream doesn't mean anything really. I'm not trying to. I had it years ago. We're talking like 9 years ago, you know. But I didn't forget it. I didn't forget. I'm telling you now, like that stuff sticks with you because my reaction was so real. And I'm not gonna lie, I was absolutely, unfathomably terrified in that moment. I did not know. I learned I'm not prepared then. Like, I'm not prepared. Maybe now it would be different. I'd be like, huh, I remember this dream. Maybe it would be different now because I've had the dream. My initial conscious reaction will be a bit more together. But I'm trying to imagine somebody who's never even looked into any of this stuff, has never had a conversation like me and you have had here right now. They're not ready.
Where would you start? Right. Yeah, where would you even begin with something like that? And it's crazy because, like, with what you're mentioning about the sky turning black in the dream, yeah, it's just a concept from the dream, but in a sense, that's totally plausible. Like, that something has taken up so much of the area above you that you can only see that. There are some movies that have it. I think Independence Day is a good example where it's like, it's so big you can't see the sky, but you can see, like, the textures and the lighting and all the weird little, like, the sigils, so to speak, right, of the bottom of this craft. That would be absolutely terrifying. It almost makes you wonder sometimes if something like that hasn't already taken place. Like I know you said that you'd gotten to the point in the stream where we were talking about like the fake sun or whatever it is, and one of those theories is that like perhaps maybe the true sun is gone out or has left for this time. And like I'm not trying to imply that at all. I'm just saying that like that would be one of those instances that would be equivalent to that kind of terror where like the sky went dark and there was like no more sun, something like that. Or yeah, in the same way that the sky is obstructed by a craft so big that you can't even see the edges of it. Any of those things would absolutely terrify the average person. I would be terrified. You know, you can't really know how scared you'd be of something until you're in the situation yourself. So, you know, you can do all this mental exercise and training for something, but even then can't prepare you for what happens when you're really in the foxhole, so to speak.
Yeah, but yeah, I know what I said not to fear, but
Yeah.
it's not easy. That's not an easy thing to do, you know. And here's a lesser moment in my life. When I lived in Lincoln, which is like a city, it's like 140 miles away from where I live now, and I was there for a few years doing my degree. And I remember walking home very late at night. The streets are quite empty. It's quite a relatively safe student city, you know, quite a young, dense population. And I was walking home about 2 a.m, and just above the houses. And this is a very old place, by the way. All the buildings are like 200 years old. All the houses are like Victorian period, Georgian. You know, they're old, so they've been here for a long time. And just coming out above these houses, no more than maybe 50 meters to 100 meters away from me, are floating fire. And I'm not talking about Chinese lanterns. I know the difference. I'm talking silent, floating balls of light, just manifesting at one part of the sky, moving across en masse, like 20 of them, and disappearing into like an invisible vortex wall on another side. Like moving like 10 meters and just manifesting out of one side and coming through the other, like a Pac-Man situation, but not coming back.
I've seen it before,
you know,
myself. I've witnessed the same exact phenomenon on a smaller scale.
Yeah,
but like where they kind of light up like fireflies, like they come into existence almost.
Yeah,
and they move.
Exactly, but I saw like a bunch of them. Do you know what I mean? And they were moving. And people like say to you, like, oh, why didn't you film it? And do you know what? When you're in that moment, it's happening to you right in front of your eyes. Your first instinct is not to get your camera out. It really isn't. Like, you're frozen because your brain can't comprehend what's going on. It's defying all laws of physics. Everything you've ever known is being utterly, completely shattered right in front of you with a visceral, real, undeniable experience. You know, and it's like you don't think I better record this so people believe me. It's not what you think in that moment, you know. And it happened so fast; it was over within like 15 seconds, and I froze with fear in those 15 seconds. I didn't. Maybe it'd be different now. Now in hindsight, now I know a thing or two, but at the time, it's that's just a small scale non-event in terms of extraterrestrial weirdness, you know. But it happened, and even that alone froze me to the ground. Roots shot out of my feet into the floor.
Right, frozen.
You know, like 50 meters deep, and I was a tree. Like it's
when your mind is blown, it doesn't really work very well. You're like just awestruck by whatever it is. That's definitely how it works. You know, most people freeze up, or else they like resort to some kind of training. But what kind of training can you have for something like that you never could have comprehended or imagined in the first place? You know,
exactly.
There was a discussion that this guy called Tim Pool, he's a kind of a political commentator guy. I used to watch his show a lot, and he had this discussion one time where they talked about some of these Native American tribes in America when the whatever you want to call them, the colonists or whatever, when they first showed up there, these people had never seen like caravel sailing ships before. Massive, essentially canoes in their mind. They didn't really have a word for something like that. And there was a kind of a sentiment among many of these populations that their initial contact is that they almost, like a lot of the reporting, so the writings say that they just didn't see the ships. It was as if they didn't see them because they didn't know what they were or how to comprehend it. And, you know, Tim expanded on that by saying, as a skateboarder, he was aware of certain things because he's a skateboarder. And there was this wall that he used to walk past on the way to school or work or wherever it was. And there were these marks on the wall, these little black rubber marks from people like wall riding with their skateboard. And he would look at that wall and be like, wow, look at all these wall riding marks. And because he knows what they are and where they come from, he's able to notice them and identify them. But all these people walk past the wall every day and don't even look at those marks. They don't even think about the mark. It's as though it's not even there because there's nothing to connect you to it. There's nothing to make it stand out aside from just a discoloration on a surface. Mm-hmm. And so having a bit of an understanding, it kind of opens the door to further exploration on the concept. So yeah, like when we talk about aliens and Nephilim hordes and stuff, that's kind of us being skateboarders about it, that we have kind of some, idea of what this stuff is. So we tend to notice it when we see it in stuff like video games and movies and things like that. Whereas like, in general, people, it just goes right over their head because they're not aware of like the initial, to expand upon. So it's an interesting world for sure.
Could you imagine a similar situation if the spaceship turned up and people just pretend it's not there?
Yeah, I think there may be people who just, I think, was it John Kerwin that you had on your show a couple weeks ago? I think was his name.
But the Mandela effect guy.
Yeah, really, really cool discussion. And at one point he talked about how like, it's like the Truman Show. You realize that you're in this artificial environment and everything's controlled and it's not real, and then coming to that realization and then just being like, well, I don't have time for this, I gotta go to work tomorrow because Truman has to be up at 8:30 or whatever, or has to be at work at 8 a.m. or whatever it is. So you just continue with the program. And that's one of the things I related to a lot with what he was talking about, was we become aware of this stuff and like, how do you just go back to your normal life? How do you just be like, well, it's an alien ship, but I don't have time for that. You know what I mean? Like, I got kids to feed. I got to go to work tomorrow. We'll wait till the news tells us what's going on with the ship. I think many people will react in that way, like indifferent to it. Not completely unaware, or it might not be invisible to them, like in that same concept. But it could be very well something that people just don't give any energy to. They're so desensitized from here's another event. And it's like, did you guys hear about the aliens? Yeah, dude, it's crazy. And you just continue your shift, you don't even really do anything about it. I feel like there might be more of that than we think.
No, I can already see it happening in places I used to work. Like the staff rocking up at like 4 a.m. for the before 8 o'clock before the shop opens to work the delivery. You know what I mean? And they all come in and say, "Did you hear about that? The spaceship that just turned up in the north?" It's like, yeah, that's just that. Anyway, man, I think the delivery's here now. We need to hurry up because we got to get this done before we open at 8. And I bet people will turn up and get the shopping in the same day. And it's kind of, oh god, I'm going to run out of pasta today. Everyone's going to stockpile again, and we weren't ready for this. My orders weren't right. They're gonna like the typical.
They're gonna be worried about logistics instead of like. Bending doom.
It's like I'm gonna have so many off sales this week. I hope the guy doesn't come and do an audit today, otherwise it's gonna affect my end of month KDP. It's kind of, you have all these like they'll just stick to the programming because they don't have a pathway already ingrained in their brain in how to process the information. So they default, don't they, to status quo stock understandings of how to behave and what to do and how to react. And in many ways, this is what programming is, like TV. It's to get people to react the way they want them to react when the scenario happens. And there's always like don't be a Homer Simpson during this. There's always that character. You don't want to be that guy, do you? When the thing happens. And when you were talking about, was it John Goodwin, a film he was in or something like that?
Oh, John Goodman. The 10
yeah.
Cloverfield Lane. Yeah, like just the idea that there were some aliens and he believed that they were a thing, and he has a gal living in this bunker. It's a long story, but I didn't see the movie yet. I actually want to watch it just for this whole purpose. But the synopsis is that he's a alien believer and has built a bunker and been a prepper and done all this stuff. And then this alien invasion does happen. Most people just see it as some kind of catastrophe. They don't really know that it's aliens. And this girl who's like from the area ends up kind of in his shelter out of like an emergency situation. She's being chased by people or something, and he takes her in. And then over the course of the next few days or whatever, he's like, you can't go out there, because he knows there's a threat out there. And he ends up seeming more and more crazy as it goes on, up until I think at the end of the thing, she breaks out and escapes. But then it turns out like, yeah, there actually are aliens out there. There actually was an alien invasion. He was right. The crazy guy was right. So, I don't know what that says about all of us. Like maybe we are the crazy guy, or maybe we're right. Who knows?
I'm not sure. It's just confusion again, I think. But I think it's more about like, oh, don't be that guy now. Like, don't act like the crazy guy who's like saying, "Oh, if aliens tell me you got to get the guns, you got to get the bullets, you got to get in your bunker." Like, don't be the prepper type. It's like his anti-prepper, isn't it? Kind of attitude in the programming. You know, only crazy people do that. You know, I think it's funny, completely unrelated to aliens, but on that anti-prepper vibe. I've currently just watched all of House. Okay, when I have some downtime with the wife, and it happens, you know. And I'm late. Good. I'm late to the game. I'm very late to the game. I know, but I've just watched it for the first time, and you know, I have to. I'm a completionist. I've got to see it to the end. I've got to know how it ends. Terrible ending. The whole thing is just I don't know. It has some good moments, though. I'll say that. But it's interesting because obviously you get this different person coming in every week with a certain ailment, and he has to figure out what's wrong with them. But they always have like a personal political type of bent or something which they explore during the episode, you know.
Right.
And one
it's a good show. I think it's a good show to make you think.
But there was one episode about a guy who had stockpiled a bunch of guns in a hidden wall in his house, and it's talking like an armory of weaponry, just kind of in this. Like when he built the house with his wife, he got the contractors to include this hidden behind the wall trapdoor scenario, and didn't tell his wife about it, you know. And when obviously they're searching his house for toxins to find out what made him have his fit or something like that, they find this hidden room and they confront him about it. And she's like, "What's all this about?" And he's like, "Look, I just like to be prepared, you know. I'm just, it's nothing major, but you know." And he's talking about this idea that, you know, at any moment government collapse, all these type of things. You've just got to be prepped for these type of things. But the whole rest of the cast are all like, this is a symptom. He's got hyper paranoia. Clearly, he's insane, and all these type of things.
Yeah,
you know? And he's like, "I'm not insane. I'm serious." But the whole script is designed to say you're a lunatic for doing this. And in the end, he gives them all up for his wife because she doesn't feel safe having them in the house and all these type of things. And it's kind of like, you know, don't be that guy. You don't want to be that guy, do you?
Paranoid. Yeah.
Like it's kind of. But to be honest, he's right. He should be prepared for the worst. And
prepared. It's definitely one of those things that, like, you know, the sentiment remains the anti-prepper sentiment, but then also, like, how do you balance that as like followers of Christ who aren't concerned with our material bodies and stuff, right? Like we're trying to be like death of ego, whatever. You know, we were talking about it yesterday, and Wendy was like, she said she felt convicted about like being too worried about stockpiling and things in the scope of everything. And I think that's how you look at it, right? Like if you have a conviction in your heart from the Lord that's like you're spending too much money or too much energy or too much concern about what might happen, I think, yeah, to each their own in that regard. That's between you and God. But also at the same time, right, like we have a responsibility to be prepared. Like you don't want to be the guy who's standing there and you'd be like, "Well, I just expected God to do it all." You know what I mean? Like I just thought he'd handle it for me. Like I don't know.
It wasn't so much like his method of prepping I was bothered about, like the guns. You rule that out. They were just outraged at the idea that he could believe the government could even collapse, or the government was that the government was even against you in any way. It was that attitude that you really got from it. And you know, let's say he was stockpiling food. Let's just say that instead. Whatever. You know, but it's the sentiment behind it.
Right.
The hyper paranoia that, you know, the government's out to get you type of thing. The whole episode was just geared around making those people the worst type of people, you know. And they always like make them slightly sexist and racist while you're at it. You know? Let's just slap that on there.
Yeah, make him an unlikable character. We have to make sure that guy's seen as an all around not a cool guy.
Yeah. They do that all the time though with in Britain. I think I watched a Paul Joseph Watson clip. Right, and I don't watch him often, but he's from my neck of the woods.
That guy.
We have the same accent. He's from Manchester, so we're, you know, and I think that's why I listen to him, because I have like a personal affinity. But he has.
Does he live in the States?
I think
he lives in the States now, doesn't he?
I think so. He worked for InfoWars, didn't he? You know, and I don't know about the guy. He's very like divisive. He's clearly like, things are falling apart and he'll make a meme about it, you know what I mean? And he'll stoke the fire type of thing. But he was making a video showing there's a show in Britain. It's been going for like 30 years. It's called Doctors. And it's just like a continuation story.
I know about
forever, you know what I mean? And obviously they've got like a disabled person working for them who's small. And they've got this really horrible, disgusting, condescending doctor, like you like patting her on the head and stuff like this. And then they start talking about wokeness in the workplace and obviously gender identity. And he's saying, "Oh, none of this woke nonsense. Look, I have to know the gender of a person to treat them correctly." And he's actually hitting very.
It's a great argument.
All of his arguments are fantastic. And then you've got this like I guess it's supposed to be a queer representing character or something who's like, I don't think it is stupid actually, and he goes on to try and explain how it's kind of like, you know, people's feelings matter, and he's like, what an absolute load of rubbish. He's like explaining how medicine doesn't care about that type of thing. You have to know the logistics of the anatomy to treat people. But it's like they made this documentary thinking it was like a win. Like this guy is bad because he also mistreats short people.
Yeah.
But all of his arguments were like rock solid. Like they were rock solid. You can't deny what he's saying is like.
Somebody in the comment nailed it on the head. They said something like, it was something along the lines of like, even when they're trying to, even when they fabricate the argument, they still lose. Yeah. It was like, even when they make it up, they still lose the argument.
Which makes me wonder, as a conspiracy, are they playing like super 5D chess? Are they supposed to be so terrible?
Yeah, right?
Are the arguments supposed to be that bad? Because we're supposed to revolt against them and kind of stand up against them and say no more. That's the point. Like, of course their argument's terrible because it's meant to be. Like, they're not supposed to win this one. They've been set up to lose type of thing. Is that what's going on? Or are they just...
I wonder.
Or are the leaders...
Go ahead.
I'm saying, are the leaders actually that stupid and think it's legit and like, oh, this is a great one. This is going to show those bigots. Did they actually believe it?
I've always had this fear kind of, especially more about this stuff lately. Like, we don't want to get too far into it, but just like the idea that there are those among us that are not who they say they are, whether they're aliens or something else that they identify as. And then this is a big argument and contention in society about whether we should embrace those as correct ways of thinking or not. We know about that. But it kind of makes you wonder if is this like a 7D chess, you know, where it looks like they're setting up their side to be easy to beat in the argument so that then we can beat them. But then it turns out that all of our big representatives and stuff that were leading our resistance movement are actually some of them too. You know what I mean? Because then you have no leg to stand on, right? Like, we came out, we did away with wokeness, and it's like, well, what do you mean? Because all of your leaders are actually like androgyne priests of the occult order, and it's just like, oh no, because then what leg do you have to stand on when you were like, oh well, we put all our faith in Trump, and then it's like, actually, Trump is I don't know, he's a multi-generational occult criminal Satanist or something. I don't know that. I'm just saying that, like, you think you have it all figured out, and then they pull the rug out from you, and they're masters of this. This is their multi-generational mind control scheme they've put us into, is just constantly adjusting and changing to keep us on our toes, keep us from figuring it out.
Well, this is fundamentally why, as Christians, we're not supposed to put our faith in any man, no leader of this earth, nothing like that. Jesus is the only one you should be focusing on, and what he did for us and his teachings and the revelation of Christ in the end. That's the scripts. That's what you need to pay attention to, and the salvation offer he's given to you to survive it, basically. This is your way out. You want to get saved when all this goes down? Well, luckily you can be saved. It's all there, and it's kind of, don't trust any political figure who's promising you or some odd alien being who turns up saying, I can help you advance to the next level, or anything like this. Like, just focus on him. He's the only thing that we could hold on to as true. And we're not saying that because the book says so. We're saying that because of personal, tangible, real experiences of being saved by him. It's kind of, we know he's real because we've experienced it. That's how we know it's real, not just because this is kind of always the argument against, isn't it? Like, oh, well, how do you know the Bible hasn't been corrupted? It's kind of like, because Jesus has proven himself to be true every time I've tested him myself, you know what I mean? And asked him to prove it to me in a true, personal, tangible, real experience. It's kind of, it just corroborates the book's truth,
Exactly. And there's no doubt in my mind that they haven't tried to manipulate the way we perceive the texts of the Bible, or the way that we look at the story of Jesus, or what he came to the earth to do. I mean, just passing, we've seen examples of like where the church is really focused on the crucifixion of Christ as though that was the only thing he came to do, and very little discussion of the kingdom and his agenda regarding, restoring mankind and authority and all those things. We kind of brush over all of that. And even without actually changing what the Bible says, it's really easy for a lot of these, silver-tongued preachers and stuff to teach people, ideas about what the Bible says that aren't actually in the Bible at all. So I think, not to say it's the least of our concerns, but like, it doesn't stop with the idea that the Bible itself has been manipulated. We should be looking more at like the organizations that aren't even using the Bible while claiming to be at the same time that there is a Bible you can access and read. Most of the time, we're not actually getting that as the subject material in these organizations. So it's a tough time to be a believer, because when you try to explain to somebody what it is you believe and why you believe it, their mind is filled with these examples that are just terrible, like straw men for the argument, so to speak, like the Christian church today. And of course, I always try to preface this by saying, like, if I bring up a church or a group or somebody that I say is doing something terrible, I want the audience to know that, like, unless you're doing it too, I'm not talking about you. So, like, if you have a church you go to that's like a good, wholesome church, like, that's good. Praise the Lord. So when I say like the church today, I just mean like the big church, the monster church, and that tends to be our biggest enemy, I think, when it comes to being like followers of Christ, because of those that misrepresent what that means to actually follow Christ.
Yeah,
and
absolutely. But like I said, it's happening on that scale, certainly. And to be honest, that's been happening before the printing press, when everything was just in Latin and only certain people could read. They were telling you what it said, and once everyone could get their own copy in the hand, they had to change tact. And it's kind of like, well, you listen to what this guy tells you it says, because who's got time to read the Bible? It's kind of, they changed up the tactic a little bit. But I thought it was funny you saying these straw men of Christians that are everywhere in media and all over the place. And again, I think I saw like an image advertisement on Netflix for some new release thing that's just come out, and it's some horror Goosebumps style reboot, something or other. But it shows like this woman in the front in like a green lit corridor, and behind her is a nun holding a rosary bead and a wooden cross in her hand, just behind her. And it's kind of like, that's what people think it is. That's all Christians are, just that. They're just this exorcist style uppity nun in the background, this prude of some kind who's got this stern look on her face, and it's kind of, that's all Christians. You know what I mean? It's kind of, if you're not that, you're Ned Flanders.
Right? Yeah. That's what I was gonna say. You're basically, otherwise you're just like not real. Like, you're detached. You live in a bubble, so to speak. Like, when it comes to that Ned Flanders style Christianity. It's like, oh, everything's fine, neighbor. Everything's dandy. Like, I don't know if it's dandy. It doesn't mean that we have to be negative about it, but man, we should at least acknowledge our environment, right? That's I think the hardest part about like the church at large, is that there's this kind of separation. It becomes this little like segmented group that doesn't address reality as it is. It's like Christian church is not the place to ask the leadership about giant bones and stuff, or even stuff that's pertaining to Christianity, like demonology or anything like that. They're very much like, stick to the script, tithe money in the bucket, and that's to each their own. But I just see it as like, in our collective quest to become closer to the Lord and do what it is He's called us to do. That is one of our greatest competitions, in terms of like, as witnesses to the kingdom, because you've got, like you said, like that deeply entrenched, like weird nun holding a wooden cross and rosary style image of what it is to follow Christ. And it's very much religious, just like any other religion, right? It's like rituals that they do to appease the deity, or those that think the deity thinks a certain way. It's a strange time, only in a time like so close to the end. I'm not trying to put a date on anything, but I have to think that we as a human people must be farther than ever, closer than ever to what may come to pass. Maybe not in our life, but maybe, who knows? And this is just the kind of stuff that you would see, maybe that's intentional. Like, maybe they want us to feel like it's the end times, but it sure starts to feel like that. You know what I mean? Let's get a little out there.
Well, yeah, like I said, I just don't want to get caught off guard when whatever does go down goes down. That's my philosophy, always has been. That's why I'm speculating wildly here with broad strokes about a lot of different things. That's what we do. This is what this is. Don't take this as any gospel truth. We're just
like a weird research classroom, and we're not official. Like, we're the volunteer research team.
Exactly. Yeah. Thanks for volunteering today. I appreciate it.
Oh yeah, I'm glad to be here. I see it as a very fair exchange, considering I have no video this week, so just give me something. So I'll just tell people to come over here and check out this stream this week, and we'll be back Sunday at 8:30 for the Sunday service. So,
absolutely. If you want to, you can rip this off of a YouTube to MP4 converter website and put it on your channel. I'm okay with that. I won't be. I'll just let you have it. Do what you want with it. I'm not bothered. But yeah, guys, to everyone listening, The Cult of Con. This is Connar. That's why it's called Con. Okay, that's just so people know. Go check out his channel. It's very small, but I don't know. It deserves to be bigger. It should be bigger, is what I believe. And I enjoy listening to him. A lot of people who are in the chat already, regulars on my channel, I see on your live streams. You're talking with them all the time. And, you know, and it's great that we've created this little network and community. And I know they enjoy what you do as well. And yeah, go over. The links are in the description. Go to his channel, subscribe, boost those numbers. He deserves it. And yeah, I hope next time, your next main character podcast, maybe you can do like 11.5 episode or something like that next time.
Yeah, let's do that. Let's revisit and hash out a couple things next week.
Absolutely. So yeah, you have 2 shows, don't you? Do you want to explain what you do for people, and then we'll where they can find you, and we'll leave it there.
Awesome. Yeah, so I mean, again, thank you, Paul, for letting me come out here and sharing this space with me and being able to be here. It's kind of, I'm trying to get over it, but it's still kind of a weird kind of a fanboy thing, because like, watched your channel. It's like, there's some kind of a weird, it just seems larger than life, but I'm loving it. It's awesome. Great time being here and everything. So guys, just so you know, my channel, it's called The Cult of Con. I am Connar, Con Man, whatever you want to call me. But at the end of the day, I do 2 shows. I do a midweek show called The Main Character Podcast, and it's kind of a joke that I call it that. I don't really think I'm the main character. It's just kind of a slightly antagonistic joke. But anyway, it's just part of my motif. So we do that Wednesday, 6 p.m. Pacific, and that's just like a variety stream. We talk about everything, very similar to our discussion today here on Understanding Conspiracy. And then on Sunday at 8:30 a.m. Pacific, I do what I call Sunday service, which is just my effort to, you know, ruminate and meditate on the things that the Lord is putting in my heart and my mind, and the experiences I'm having in my life, and how that reflects in my journey in seeking the Lord and trying to become the good and faithful servant that He's called me to be. And so in that context, that's just me trying my best to be not a preacher, but just somebody who really devotes at least some segment of time every week to, you know, what it is that God's doing in my life. And I've seen that people find it to be a edifying experience, and I'm grateful for that more than anything. So I hope you guys will join us on Sunday at 8:30 for the Sunday service.
Absolutely.
And then aside from that, give us a subscribe. We're trying to get to 500 as our current subscriber goal, so we can start the partner program and start churning our way into perhaps turning this into some sort of an endeavor. We'll see.
Well, I'm rooting for you there, Connar. I'm going to do my best to try and help you get there as much as I possibly can.
I appreciate it, Paul.
Yeah,
I really do.
And it was actually the Sunday service I first listened to, which got me onto your channel. I think you had like 50 subscribers then, so I don't know what you had.
Yeah, maybe less. But until I came onto your show the first time, I mean, I think I had like 50 or something.
But yeah,
so
it was
a lot. Thanks to you. But this community is fantastic, and I owe a great amount of that to you. Many of the people that come to see our show regularly over there are people that I encountered through your community that you've cultivated. And so it's an honor, and I'm really grateful. And I'm glad to have gotten to meet all of you awesome people on this journey so far as well.
Fantastic. Well, thanks for that, I appreciate it. And for everyone listening, if you want to support this channel, you can go to Understanding Conspiracy, the Telegram group. Get on there. That's where the community is. That's where we're all talking. I don't think you're on there yet, Connar, are you? But I think, are you in there? Are you in the Telegram?
Oh, no. The Telegram, you know what? I didn't have Telegram for the longest time, but I got it recently because I was pirating an audiobook. So I'll join the Telegram
Get in
group.
the Telegram, yeah, absolutely.
I will get in there,
There's too much good stuff on there to miss out on. So many memes, it's unbelievable. It's getting good. It's getting really good. But yeah,
awesome.
Get on the group.
Can't wait.
The link's down below for anyone listening. Again, if you want to support me, you can go to Patreon, or you can buy yourself a book on Amazon and get yourself a copy of the Nephilim Look Like Clowns. Or if you want one of these, I've got these to sign, and you can get your own signed copy. I've got a few hardbacks here and some paperbacks as well. And this is this month's batch. I've already sold 3 of them, so they do go relatively quick. So get in there while the batch is hot and off the presses, as they say. Just message me at understandingconspiracy@gmail.com for your own signed copy. But other than that, guys, I will be back on Friday. I think on Saturday I'm with the Awakened podcast. I don't know if I'll be streaming that live, but I'll be releasing it as soon as they publish that as well. But I am actually going to be off next week. I'm going on holiday for a week, and I don't think I'll have any content out in that week. So if you're wondering where I am or what's going on, I will be back. I'm just taking a break, because I am tired. I'm sure you're tired too, Connor. We're all tired, aren't we? We all need a break. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, I'm off my break. I'm back, so
You're
I'll be
back.
there on Wednesday next week. So if you guys are bored and Paul's on vacation, you want to pop by, I'll be there.
There you go. There you go. Yeah, I'll filter them to you instead while I'm taking a vacation, guys. But anyway, thanks for listening, and as always, God bless. When ordinary people think of autumn, they imagine shorter days, cozy fires, curling up with a great piece of literature, and basking in the warming scent of cinnamon with shades of burnt orange, which your other half has decided to spend the life savings on to decorate the home for only 2 months, just as God intended. Yet we must remember that this transition into the frosty abyss of winter creates the perfect conditions for the spread of the pathogen known as Halloween. This disease causes people to dress like demons and go door to door asking for free stuff. This public service announcement aims to give you the correct tool to help you deal with these contagious commie behaviors when they manifest in your local community. First, you'll want to arm yourself with multiple shots of the best-selling paperback on Amazon called The Nephilim Looked Like Clowns. With this PPE, you're fully equipped and well protected to handle what's to come next. Second, have a pumpkin spice latte and white girl autumn your time away in knitted cream shackets and pilgrim hats, because soon enough, Samhain begins. This is when the veil between the spirit realm and the physical world is at its thinnest, and possession, the main symptom of Halloween, is more commonly presented, causing this type of unironic cringe to start happening. Just look at him. This poor soul thinks he looks cool. And if you're not careful, this could be you. Together we can stop the spread of Halloween and flatten the curve. When you see fully grown adults playing dress-up and mirroring unspeakable horrors from beyond the void, remember your training and cure their vapid sense of self-identity by handing them one of our favourably reviewed treatments. Your country must develop herd immunity to seasonal cringe. So, spread the cure far and wide. Just like the cure, this disease does not discriminate by age. Emulating the infected, you will see children running around in bedsheets, knocking on doors, begging for sugary treats, and threatening to damage your well-earned property. Make sure to fill their novelty buckets with the one thing all children secretly want: a well-rounded and relatable education in biblical history. That'll stop the spread. The Nephilim look like clowns, and the inevitable boost of volumes are currently the only known cure to thinly veiled demon channeling holidays. This is your best defense against this pandemic of spooky proportions. All you have to do is trust the science. Which you know we did, because I'm showing you people wearing lab coats and looking serious. Get your copy on Amazon today, and be prepared for tomorrow. Side effects of reading The Nephilim Look Like Clowns include, but are not limited to, a feeling of existential crisis, a well-rounded knowledge of a Christian contrarian view on human history, a foundational understanding of spiritual warfare, and a healthy aversion to clowns.